we'll move on to Felix Mendelssohn and his Fifth Symphony, or at least his fifth published symphony. By contrast, Mendelssohn's as well as Schubert's symphonies tend more towards classical structures, though certainly with dramatic contrasts and lyrical themes that remain important elements of the Romantic symphonic ideal. Mendelssohn's symphonic output includes 5 symphonies, several overtures and collections of incidental music, and concerti, 4 for piano, 2 for violin. Numerous among his symphonies are ones that reference a generic programmatic idea, not necessarily the specific story and the specific illustrations that we see in Berlioz, though the Reformation Symphony comes close. The Reformation Symphony was for an anniversary of the Augsburg Confession, which was sort of the confession of faith of the Lutheran Church. Here we have a symphony that begins with a andante D major, lovely passage, and moves into a sort of D minor, you see at the bottom of the left-hand page, Allegro con fuoco. It's a D minor, almost battle music. We then go through a number of other movements, but we end with the 4th movement that quotes Ein feste Burg, "A mighty fortress is our God," sort of the national anthem of the Lutheran Church, which we had mentioned several modules ago when we studied the Reformation. What's particularly fascinating about this is the opening tune of the 1st movement is a subject that has to it a stile antico feel. It feels like old Catholic counterpoint. Bum, bum, body. You could almost hear Palestrina setting that to Agnus Dei for some sort of mass. So it feels Catholic at the beginning. In fact, we hear a melodic formula at the end of that D major section, a rising scale. Bum, 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 which was what was known as the Dresden Amen. This Dresden was a Catholic area. So we have a sort of Catholic tune and a Catholic cadential structure that gives us a sense of Catholicism at the beginning. We then enter this embattled state, which seems to represent the early struggles of the Reformation. And we end with Ein feste Burg. Interestingly, he begins us in G major. Yum, bum, bum, ba, da, dee, dun, dun. If you look over on the right-hand side of the page, you'll see that those notes are G, 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 D, F sharp, G, E, D. Now for anyone with perfect pitch, I apologize. I have relative pitch, and so I'm just singing intervals. What's interesting about this, though, is if you compare those pitches to the ones that we get at the very beginning, we have D, E, G, F sharp. It's that same pitch collection. He has transformed the Catholic music into Lutheran music. He's moved us from Catholic counterpoint to Lutheran counterpoint. Let's take a listen to how some of this plays out. we start to hear the embattled reformers pushing away against the strictures of the Catholic Church of that time. At least that's sort of the imagery that's evoked there. Now we move on to movement 4, and we hear the chorale Ein Festburg ist unser Gott, made up of those initial pitches from the Catholic counterpoint that has now been transformed into Lutheran counterpoint, into a Lutheran tune, an idea. Now, here we see that it's a sort of generalized program. Certainly programmatic in that there is a story being told and that plot is played out musically, but a little bit looser than what we see with Berlioz. And with a slightly more classical bent, where the harmonic structures and forms are more reverential to the classical ideals than with the free-form Fantasia-like ideas that Berlioz invokes. And you'll have a chance to hear how this symphony plays out as you listen to it.